Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in New York State in 1981. I would like to welcome our viewers and listeners worldwide and our live Zoom studio audience to this evening's program in our Root and Branch Association Limited English Language Conference and Lecture Series, broadcasting from Jerusalem, Israel, and now celebrating our first quarter century, first 25 years, from January 1995 until 2020 today. Today is Wednesday, December 9th, 2020, in the Gregorian calendar, and the, let me double check, 24th day of Kislev 5781 in the Israelite Hebrew calendar. We are broadcasting from the land of Israel, city of God, Jerusalem. Our speaker for this evening's program is actually our program chair, Dr. Les Glassman, who will speak about his work as Israeli STEM Commissioner. And now I would usually welcome the program chair to welcome the speaker, but in this case, the program chair is the speaker. So without further ado, I hand it over to Dr. Les Glassman.
Okay, well, Noel, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight on the Root and Branch. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank Larry for helping me with the technical side, for getting these images out, and for helping me actually put on the images. Without Larry, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I'm extremely grateful. And I want to thank you all for joining. So it is really a tremendous honor and a privilege to be here tonight. And I hope you find it interesting. So stamps, you know, you hear everybody saying today, stamps, well, it's a thing of the past. What's the big deal about stamps? Nobody even knows what stamps are. And if you go and you ask children, do you know what a stamp is? They might stamp their feet, but very few people know, you know, what the stamp actually was or is. And when I grew up, my late father, Zichron Lebracha, was a tremendous stamp collector. He was a judge, a philatelic judge, and he instilled in my siblings, my two brothers and my sister, and myself, a tremendous love for stamps. He would bring us packets of stamps, and we were so excited to receive these gifts. When we look at the different countries, we'd see countries, exotic places all over the world, and we'd see themes like animals and space, and it was just very exciting. And my dad took me to a few of his meetings, which we were like the youngest, and they had an auction there. And it was a different world. It was like really a different world. And my late grandmother, Alava Shalom, she used to tell us about Lithuania. And she used to tell us that we always knew that when she was a young girl, they were very Zionistic, their family, and her parents decided that the mother and the children would go to the Holy Land. It was under the Turks before the British, before the First World War. And her father would stay behind in Lithuania, and he would provide for the family. He would later join them. And they communicated via letters, and he would send money also via the post. So it was intriguing to think that in those days they never had telephones, they never had, the only way of communication was by letters and postcards. And that's how my late grandmother, actually, they arrived in Jaffa, and they attended the Hebrew gymnasium, and her father stayed behind in Mariupol in Lithuania, and they would correspond. My grand would say that she would write the letters. And I actually have one over here. This is one of the many that we have, but this is with the stamp. And I don't know if you can all see, but they used every single space on this postcard because it was quite expensive with the stamp and sending it, but this is how they would communicate. So we grew up with that, and I grew up with my brothers and my sister and myself with a tremendous affinity to stamps. And then I started collecting, and I started collecting the whole world. And then I just realized that I'll never be able to collect all the stamps in the world. So I think my father mentioned to me, why don't you just specialize in one area? And I loved animals. I started collecting animals. And then I also realized, wow, there's so many different animals and so many different stamps of animals. So I narrowed it down to something which I don't think anybody had done before. I decided I'm going to collect dogs and cats. And I collected dogs and cats, any stamp which had a dog or a cat. So that's what it became my, I wouldn't say obsession, but I was very, very passionate about any stamp that had a dog or a cat on. And then my father explained to us how we should write it up on pages, put the stamp in a little story about the dog, or where it came from and which country. And then we entered little, for children, exhibitions where you'd put, say, 20 pages with your stamps on, you mount them, and you write a little story about the stamp or the dog. And I loved doing it. So I did that, and we all got our little medals, and it was actually quite exciting. And then I got in the post, they asked me if I could represent South Africa in Rhodesia. In those days, it was Rhodesia, today it's Zimbabwe, in Salisbury, which my wife actually comes from Salisbury. Well, today it's called Harare. And in 1972, I exhibited my dogs and cats in Salisbury. I sent it with a commissioner, and they gave me this medal, which I really treasure. This is going back from 1972 in Salisbury in Rhodesia. And that developed my real love for philately. When I came on Opan in 1975, we stayed in Jerusalem for 4 months. I was 15 years old, and I started collecting a few of the postcards. And then I realized that a lot of the stamps of Jerusalem are similar to the postcards. So I did something else. I had the postcard, and then I got the stamp, which was similar to the postcard, and I made a collection of that. And then I just started developing a further interest in Jerusalem, and I started developing an interest in the postal history of Jerusalem in the time of the British and the Ottoman, and I just started a small collection on Jerusalem. And I exhibited, I made it into an exhibition, and I exhibited it in London as a youth, and then in a few other countries. And then when we made Aliyah, my wife, myself, and our 2 daughters, it's now nearly 27 years ago, in 94, I asked if I could have the privilege to exhibit for Israel. And they allowed me, and I started exhibiting for Israel. And then what happened in 2010, there was an international exhibition in Johannesburg, in South Africa. And because I was South African, they said to me, would I like to be the Israeli commissioner to represent Israel in South Africa, where you take, what means being a commissioner is you take collections from other exhibitors, people that also collect various different topics. It can be postal history, or it can be thematics, or it can be aerophilately, many different topics on philately. And I said, it was such a great honor. I couldn't believe that they had asked me to do it, but I accepted. And we had quite a few collections that I took with me. And it's very interesting when you go to a country and you take the collections, even though some of these collections are extremely valuable, the insurance company will only insure if the commissioner has it with him all the time on the plane. You can't put it in the hold. It's not insured. So there are all these collections. Thank God I was using LL, so I was very overweight, but they allowed me. And I put all the different, it's quite heavy because you're taking frames where there's sometimes 80 pages for one collection, but we managed, it was a miracle that we managed. And I came to South Africa, I was in Johannesburg, and I represented Israel as a commissioner for the very first time. And there were countries like Pakistan were being represented there, and all different countries, India and parts of Africa, and it was a world exhibition. And I wore my yarmulke, obviously, and what happened is that the Pakistani commissioner came up to me, knowing that I'm Jewish, and he said, how do I know what is halal? And having lived in South Africa, I go back there twice a year, I knew that on most of the food, they had the sign and the halal sign. So I bought him a packet of crisps and some chocolates, and I showed him this is a halal sign, this is the betting sign, and we became friendly. And then I saw that the Indian commissioner and the Pakistani commissioner weren't speaking to each other. So I went up to both of them and I said, you know, you guys are you love cricket, right? Cricket in India and Pakistan is like the national sport, and their eyes lit up. And I said, I know about Khan and I know about Tendulkar, and you both have the most amazing teams. And then we all started speaking cricket. And then here's a picture I'm just going to show you, because this isn't the topic of the talk, but this is a picture of the Pakistani on the right. I'm in the middle, and there's the Indian on the left. And they became best friends. And it's amazing, through just interacting with two commissions that really didn't speak to each other. They were coming from different worlds, kind of enemies. They became friends, and for the rest of the exhibition, they would eat together, and they became best of friends. And I think to this very day, they're still good friends. So that was a very, very successful exhibition in Johannesburg. And the press were there, and they asked me to do an article. And then I was just very grateful that I was given that opportunity. I thought this is a once of time, because there are many other commissioners. And then what happened in 2012, Indonesia was hosting a world stamp championship. And they were going to have a FIP conference. Now, FIP is the Federation of International Philately, where countries from all over the world, they have a day where they have like a symposium, and they get together and they discuss all the various matters pertaining to the postal system and how to regulate it, and any problems, and how to promote, and everything to do with philately. And the Indonesian, what was happening is that the Indonesian Philatelic Federation, which falls under the Post and Telecommunication, which is a governmental department, part of the Indonesian government, sent out an invitation. And one of the invitations came to Israel. And Israel and Indonesia don't have any diplomatic relations. So they knew, the Federation, they knew that I have a South African passport. You're allowed to have either joint Israeli and South African passport. They asked me if my wife and I would be keen to represent Israel in Indonesia as a commissioner. And what I didn't realize is this was possibly, I don't know, but it possibly was the very first time that Israel was actually invited officially, because it was under the governmental department, Post and Telecommunications, to represent Israel in Indonesia. And I started communicating, and I agreed. I was I was overcome that they'd asked me. But the truth is, no one else could go, because you aren't allowed to go in with the Israeli passport. And I started communicating with the Commissioner General in Jakarta. And it was wonderful. Post was coming up and down from Israel to Indonesia, and we had emails going, and it was really quite amazing. And then I obviously accepted, and I had a few collectors that gave me their exhibitions. They were very keen to exhibit in Indonesia. And we had this communication before it was going to happen in June. The exhibition was from the 18th to the 25th of June in 2012. And what was interesting, that the exhibition coincided with the anniversary of the Bali, unfortunately, the Bali terrorist attack, where over 200 people were killed by the suicide bombers in Bali. And the Indonesian Federation was so pleased that Israel had accepted to attend, because a few of the European countries decided not to attend. Anyway, I just felt there was a very lovely correspondence. And then they told us that before we must arrive on the Saturday before, because they could go through customs in Jakarta main airport. And then I realized I can't arrive on a Saturday. So I wrote to them and I said, you know, as a big favor, I just can't, because of religious observance. Could I either come a day before or a day after, as a big favor, because I just can't come on the Saturday. And it was amazing. They were so accommodating. They said, come on the Sunday, it's not a problem. we'll bring other officials, but it was actually a big deal for them because they had to open up officials in the customs department, but they did it for me. And the theme of that exhibition in Jakarta was, it was initiated with the aim of fostering friendships and cooperation amongst philatelists worldwide. And, you know, I thought to myself, stamps know no boundaries. They cross oceans and seas throughout the world. But the theme of Indonesia was bridging the world of peace through stamps. And I really felt this bridge so personally because they really went out of the way to accommodate my wife and myself by allowing us to come on Sunday. So we went, there's obviously no direct flights between Israel and Indonesia. So we went via Singapore. And in Singapore, we spent the Shabbos there and we had arranged to go to the synagogue. They've got a beautiful synagogue in the Magen Avraham, and you can prepare, you can book your meals before. So we booked the Friday night and the Shabbos lunch meal. And it was really lovely seeing the community in Singapore. And the Shabbos lunch, what was interesting is a lot of the Israeli embassy staff and the ambassador, they come to that lunch. It's a communal, you can feel the community with the Israeli, it's their identification with Judaism, but it's a lovely atmosphere that the whole community, most people come, if you pay for your meal, if you don't pay for your meal, they're just happy to accommodate everybody. And we're sitting there and then they hear, because we are speaking, they said, we're going, and so we're heading out to Jakarta for the stamp exhibition. And then I think it was the ambassador or the vice ambassador who said, no, must be your yarmulke there. You might land up like Ronnie Rad. He was the pilot that was shot down and they never found, unfortunately. So I was a little bit nervous because I've always worn my yarmulke since a very young age. So I decided, you know, I'll just wear a cap. So the day we arrived, I'm just going to now share on the screen. This was the World Stamp Championship. As we arrived at the airport in Jakarta, I used my South African passport, but I represented Israel. And what was interesting, and I'll show you, what was interesting is on the bulletin, it was on the actual, yes, this was the actual bulletin that was sent to all the different commissioners, and they also had it on the website. And if you look, I don't know if you can all see it, but on the third row, there I am with the Israeli flag. It was amazing because on the official Indonesian Post and Telecommunication website, you have the Israeli flag. And then above me was the Iranian commission as well. So I was a little bit nervous. And then at the very bottom, it was from the UAE, from all the different countries, Kuwait, from all the different countries. But, you know, I couldn't believe that they put my name with the Israeli flag. Anyway, so when we arrived at the airport, I'm just going to go with this was a sign that we came across. Death penalty for drug traffickers under Indonesian law. I was a little bit, you know, it's a little bit unwelcoming seeing the sign as you arrive at the airport. And I had my cap on and I had my South African passport and I tucked away my Israeli passport, but they knew that I was, you know, representing Israel, but I went in with the South African passport, which wasn't a problem. And when we came through, we met with the customs officials. They were really, really nice to us. They were very polite. And then we had a driver that took us to the main convention center where we stayed. Actually, in the convention center, that's where they had a non-aligned movement. It was the same hall and the same venue where the non-aligned movement used to have all their conventions. And while we were driving, and I was speaking to the driver, and he asked where I'm from, and I told him I'm representing Israel. So I said, oh, that's wonderful. And he started asking about Jerusalem and Israel. And so I thought, you know what, all my life I've worn a yarmulke. I'm not going to go around with a cap. So I took off my cap, and then I had my yarmulke. And I didn't know what would be, but it actually turned out pretty good. So we arrive at the convention center, and this is the welcoming committee. And everybody's smiling. There's my wife in the middle. There we are sitting, and everybody, it was so nice. They go like this. It was it was really, they made us extremely welcome. There was a welcoming committee. And this is just a video where you can see of the opening ceremony.
Organizations in some cities throughout Indonesia. In the early 1953, FVPI became General Association of Philatelists in Indonesia, with its first public exhibition called Under the Louvre, held in Jalan Galuh.
Those were all the commissioners. There was a lot of press, as you can see. It was widely covered in the press. In the mayor of Jakarta was present, the governor of that area where Jakarta is, and the head of the Indonesian Philatelic Federation. They had many speeches, both in Indonesian and in English, and it was really, it was actually very, very nice to be part of it. This was just, they gave us, they put on a lovely event. This is authentic Indonesian dances. Now, this was very interesting. As you come into the exhibition hall, this is a collage made of stamps of President Suharto. He was a very popular president in Indonesia. And if you look very closely, it's all made out of Indonesian stamps. So it was actually quite unbelievable to see this. It was really, really, really lovely. This is, as you can see, I was wearing my yarmulke, and it says on my name, Israel, and the picture, and I just became quite friendly with the officials, and they always came up to me and they said, "How can we help? Is everything okay?" They were incredibly polite and very, very helpful. This was at the opening ceremony. Here's my wife, and Indonesian, a little exotic, but they made the most magnificent opening ceremony. And here I am meeting with today we have diplomatic relations, which is a miracle in itself. But this is 2012, 8 years ago. He was the commissioner from Bahrain, and we had we actually got on extremely well. This was a philatelist who wasn't a commissioner, but he goes to all the exhibitions, and he was from Saudi Arabia. And although he didn't speak much English, but we had a common interest in stamps, and it was just so nice that we connected. This was a very interesting picture. My wife and I met the Egyptian. This was the Egyptian judge and his wife. And I told the Egyptian judge that I spent on my way to South Africa. I would stop over often. I went via, it was actually, I didn't tell him this, but it was the cheapest flight to go to South Africa via Air Egypt. And I spent sometimes a day or two in Cairo. I once went to Alexandria, and I mentioned to him the different shuls that I went to in Old Cairo and in Alexandria, which is an amazing shul. It's got actually 90 Sifrei Torahs there in Alexandria. It's a very interesting shul, the one in Alexandria, because on the same street you have a mosque, a church, and a shul. And for decades, the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims lived in such harmony in Alexandria and in Cairo, in downtown Cairo. They've got a synagogue today, Sharai Shamayim. Today it's actually closed and they have guards, even though it's not really used. But I was very fortunate to go into that synagogue. But we spoke. My wife had been, when she was, before I had met her, She went on a tour of Egypt and she went down to Abu Simbel. So we had a lot in common and we were speaking about so many different topics. Now, you remember I showed you the commissioner from South Africa, the Indian commissioner who was in South Africa. So here he was, again, the Indian commissioner in Jakarta. And in the middle was somebody from Mongolia. And I'd never really ever met anybody before from Mongolia. He didn't say a word of English, but we still connected in such a lovely way. Okay, this is...
Wait a minute. Jakarta, you live in Jakarta?
Yes.
Very nice. Very beautiful.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so what happened is that they gave us one part of a day free. And we got a taxi, and I'd heard that in Jakarta, there are not many tourists that go to Jakarta. It's very industrialized. I think 12 million people in 2012. Today, there must be maybe 14, 15 million people. But they've got this magnificent tower. It's called Monas Tower. And we decided, I love going up tall buildings. I just have a fascination because you can see the whole city. And I thought, let's just go. So we, out of the hotel, we went, we got a taxi, and I said, could you take us to the Monas Tower? And here we were at this tower, and these girls were so, they looked at us as being very different because not too many tourists go there. It's only Indonesians really. And we saw them. It was so nice, but they were so friendly, as you saw in that video. The exhibition was really wonderful. And what had happened is on the last day of that exhibition, there was the FIP, that's the Federation International of Philately, had their conference. And I was representing Israel there. And each country has a representative, and you vote, and you have this conference, which is actually very important because it determines how philately and how the postal system is going to work in the next few years. So I'm going to show you the opening of the FIP conference. I have to go over here, sorry.
We are very keen to meet you wherever possible. Because I believe in both-way traffic, then we can solve a lot of things. Like this morning, my 10 minutes discussion with our new Portuguese chairman, chauffeur, we solved a lot of doubts in our mind, although I know him for so many years. Right, thank you, chauffeur. And we take for example.
Okay, I don't know if you saw, but it was very interesting. I don't know what to expect. I'd never been to one of these FIP conferences before. They have them every 4 years. It's like a mini United Nations, but in a good way. And I was seated, the delegate from Ireland didn't come. I was seated next to the Iranian commissioner. And it was phenomenal because before we had arrived, I just didn't know how I was going to react. You know, the tensions between, and even to this very day, between Iran and Israel were very, very tense. And what had happened is in the mornings, my wife and I would go to the breakfast and we'd have the coffee and they had fruit. So the Iranian commissioner's daughter came up to us in the hotel one breakfast morning, and she said to us, how are you keeping kosher in Jakarta? And she was so nice, and we couldn't believe that she made the first step. And we just told her that we brought our own provisions, and you know, and we eat fruit and the coffee, and it's fine, and it's not a big deal. But that broke the ice, and it was amazing because we spent the whole day together. The person on my other side was from Japan, and he really didn't speak a word of English. So the Iranian commissioner knew English pretty well, and we just spoke, and it was amazing how we just connected so beautifully. I think the year before, or even in the beginning of 2012, Iran won the best film in the foreign film for the Oscars. And I actually saw that film, and I told him I saw the film on Iran, and we really got on very, very nicely. So this was the picture that somebody took where it said Iran, Israel, and Japan. And you can see all the different countries behind. And looking at it, it was quite a big deal that Israel and Iran were sitting next to each other. But in the philatelic world, it was taken as for granted. You know, you all have a love for philately, and you believe in, you accept each other. You have it's religion and culture, and you are accepting of different of all different people, and you just have the same passion for stamps and for philately. So, but it was really, really quite incredible spending the day with him. And here we had a picture where we were shaking hands, and he's got his name tag saying Iran and mine with Israel. And these two pictures were actually quite significant, because when I came back from the exhibition, I kept these pictures a little bit private, and there were magazines like Haaretz that wanted these pictures. So I'm just going to stop it for a second. So what happened is that they came to my home, and they heard that I was in Indonesia, and they said, can they just do an interview with me? So I said, with pleasure. And they saw the pictures that I had, but I said, please, you can't use these pictures, because I didn't do it for ulterior motives. And if here in Israel, it would go down very well, but in Iran, it could be pretty dangerous. And we see it. It's actually happened since then. I think the Miss World was with Miss Lebanon having a picture, and she was ostracized. And Omer Adam was with an Egyptian singer, and he got tremendous. They wanted to boycott the Egyptian singer for having had a picture with Omer Adam. So I just didn't want to cause any problems, and we took these pictures in good faith. So I said to the journalists from Haaretz, I said, no, please, you can't use these pictures. And they respected it. So this is just a short video that I didn't even know they were doing this video. They were just interviewing me, and they asked me just to speak into a recorder, and I did. I'm just going to play it for you.
Dr. Glassman. I live in Jerusalem. I've been collecting stamps from a very young age. I was very fortunate to be the Israeli commissioner in Jakarta, Indonesia, for a World Stamp Championship exhibition. The theme was bridging the world of peace through stamps, and by officially inviting Israel to participate, I think it was very significant, because basically the two countries, Indonesia, which has the most populous Muslim country in the world with over 250 million Muslims, has no diplomatic relations with Israel. When we arrived, we were extremely warmly received. Most Indonesians had never met an Israeli before, let alone anyone wearing a yarmulke, and the response was extremely positive. When I mentioned us from Israel, people were very, very interested to know more about the country. My collection is Mozambique and Mozambique Company. It's not the rarity of the stamps, it's just the display that I've done a lot of research on it. Mozambique Company was an area inside Mozambique that was semi-independent. It was a company that lasted for nearly 50 years, that had a bit of independence. And one of the features of the independence is they issued their own stamps separate to Mozambique. Just giving a little school kid an envelope coming from Israel with a stamp of Israel, with a message from Israel, they received it so warmly. They were so happy to have it in their possession that I gave it as a gift. I'll remember that forever. It was really wonderful. It broke down all barriers. The message of peace through stamps, it really does work. Just as a stamp knows no boundaries. So I think when you connect with people, when you have similar ideals, and when you just look at each other as individuals, it's just wonderful to see that you really are part of a family of nations.
Okay, so I was amazed, because I know that they do this, and Haaretz actually put it on their website, and it was really nice of them to do this. But for me, and I think one of the most incredible things about this, what I did is by giving the kids, I gave them first day covers with stamps from Israel, and the happiness when they received it, the joy that I was giving them a gift from Israel, you know, it was something that, it was like I gave them gold. It really was. And that was really, it was really wonderful to see that. In all the time I was there, and all the people that I spoke to, and I'd taken a lot of first aid covers and a lot of stamps to give people from Israel, I never had one person that said, no, I don't want it, or I can't accept it, it's from Israel. So that was an incredible positive experience that I had. So there were quite a few, because my wife and I really, basically, I think we were the first. I could be wrong, but we didn't know. I tried to look it up, and I think we possibly could have been the first Israeli official delegation to be in Indonesia. So the Times of Israel, they did an article about our trip to Indonesia, but without the pictures of the Iranian commissioner and me. And it also appeared in the Times of Asia. They did this article as well. And through this article, the Times of Asia, I got a message that there's a Jew living in Indonesia that wants to make contact. And before I had left, I actually Googled, well, in those days, I didn't know if there was Google, but I tried to investigate, is there a Jewish community? I know there was once a Dutch colony, and are there any Jews living there? Is there any kahila, any shuls around? And I found nothing. And I asked quite a few people, and people said, no, there aren't really any. There might be a handful of Jews, but they live secretively. Anyway, I got this message, and his name is Yaakov Baruch. He wrote to me and he said, he saw the article of mine in the Times of Asia, and he said he's always longed, he's never seen what it is, and he'd love to have an etrog. So, and it was coming up for Sukkot. So a very close friend of mine, he sells etrogim. So I asked him, please, can I get one? It was maybe about a month and a half before Sukkot. And I managed to get one, and I wrapped it up, and I put it in a parcel, and I actually sent it to Indonesia. And I sent it to him. Unfortunately, it arrived a day after Sukkot, but it was the first time he had ever seen an etrog and smelt an etrog. And then it was quite interesting. I asked a few rabbonim, because he asked me, what can you do with it? And it's amazing how the rabbonim, it wasn't the first time this question's been asked. Can you plant it? Can you use it for the next year? Can you put it in a jug where you light a match and then you close it so it's airtight? Anyway, I think he did plant it eventually. But this is Yaakov Baruch, and he came to Israel, and we met and we communicated, and I'm going to show you a video that we made. He wanted to do an interview, but he wanted to make it special. He arrived very late. I think I came to fetch him at 12. I met him in Yerushalayim, and then we decided the best place to go is the Kotel. So here's the interview at the Kotel.
Shalom, my name is Yaakov Baruch. I was born in Jakarta, Indonesia, and I was born into a half Indonesian and half Dutch family. And then since I was a kid, I didn't know anything about Judaism, about Jewish life, until my grandmother revealed about her background one time when I was in high school, that she is Jewish. And then from that time, I tried to find my spiritual life, my spiritual journey to Judaism. And
Jacob, can I ask you on this point? How old were you when your grandmother revealed that she was Jewish? Do you remember how old you were?
I was around 17 at that time, 17 years old.
And what religion were you practicing?
I was raised in the Christian family. So, but it's like a traditional Christian, so it's not really religious, but like I know that my family is half Indonesian, half Dutch, and they practice some Christian the other part of family practice Catholic, and some is not even go to church.
Was your father a Christian?
Yes.
Okay, and then he revealed more. There is part in the family also, I don't want to say it on air, but there's somebody who's not Christian and not Jewish as well. So he was scared that if he says it, his life might be endangered. And what's happened is he allowed me to put this video, the whole interview, on YouTube. And the amount of comments that I've had and the views, it's been remarkable. Most of the comments are Indonesians. I really don't really know what they're saying. But Yaakov and I developed quite a lovely connection. He once came with his wife and they came to our home for dinner. And he's the only religious Indonesian, Jewish Indonesian. And it's phenomenal. So this was one of the, from him reading an article about that exhibition, and we in touch with each other on Facebook a lot and on WhatsApp. And he just opened up, he stays in a place called Manado, and they just built a shul. At one time, the shul was actually destroyed, and they've just rebuilt the shul now. So this was something actually quite unbelievable. And I developed a very close friendship, which we have to this very day. Okay, now this is a very interesting photo. In 2013, a year later, in 2013, yeah, this is a picture I'm just going to show you. It's got the Iranian, the Egyptian, and the Turkish commissioner. I just want to go on. So in 2000, and after the exhibition in 2012, a few months later, I actually got an email from very close friends that my wife and I had made, a commissioner from Australia, actually the judge from Australia. Both him and his wife were judges. He's Jewish and his wife's Indonesian, and they got married, and everybody actually got on so nicely with each other. And we corresponded and we sent emails, and we always would wish each other on Christmas or Hanukkah, that we'd correspond. So I got an email once where they told me that the Iranian commissioner had passed away. And I had the Iranian commissioner's family the email. So I wrote them an email, and in those days, I was using NetVision, which I still have. So netvision.net.il, I sent an email to Tehran. And I wished them a long life. And I said, my sincere condolences. I had such a lovely connection with your dear late father. May his memory be for eternal blessing. And the son replied to me, and he was very overcome that I sent this email. And he said he'd love to meet. And he said he's going to be the commissioner in Melbourne the following year. And I wasn't really supposed to go to that exhibition because there was another exhibitor. But unfortunately, he broke up with his girlfriend. There were many exhibits that he had to take, and he had to carry them. By hand, so he couldn't single-handedly do it. So they asked me if I would be prepared to do it. And my wife, as a high school teacher, she couldn't come, but my daughter had just finished the army. And I asked her, Shironi, if she could join me, and she was only too happy to join. And I accepted. So I went to Melbourne, and that's the previous picture. I'll show it. So in Melbourne, I actually met with the son, and from the first moment that we met, we had coffee together, we developed a very, very close connection. And the Egyptian commissioner, what a wonderful person, and the Turkish one as well. The Turkish commissioner actually happened to be Jewish, and we were in East Melbourne by the main exhibition. It's a 100-year-old building, it's a national heritage site, and there was a shul, the East Melbourne shul, which it's not really in the Jewish community, it's part of the east part of the town. And I met the Rabbi Gutnik, a wonderful person. And I actually schlepped the Turkish commissioner to come with me to shul because it fell over Shavuot. And we just made the minyan. It was incredible. We just had 10 men in shul, and he helped make that minyan. Anyway, so that was really, really lovely. And the Iranian commissioner, who was in that previous picture, he gave me one of the most prized gifts that I've ever received. and this is the book. That's the Stamps of Israel in Farsi. So here you see the Stamps of Israel with the Doivri, and it's got Hebrew and Farsi. And it was actually I value this book. On the one side it's in Hebrew, and the other side it's in Farsi. And it was printed in Tehran. And he gave this to me as a gift. And obviously I gave him gifts from Israel as well, but this is something that I will always treasure. It was really, really, really special. And I remember that my uncle, he lived in Israel, and their daughter and her family were sent, I think it was Sorel Baneh, in the 70s. A lot of Israelis, this is before the Shah was deposed, had a lot of Israelis would go to Iran to work on different business deals. So this was a letter that they had sent from Iran to South Africa to uncle of ours. And they would always tell me how wonderful it was in Iran in the 70s, before the Shah was deposed and the Ayatollahs took over. But when you meet the actual, like we met the daughter and we met the father and I met the son now, you just realize that they are such lovely people. And, you know, it's such a pity that you have so-called enemies when the actual people don't want to be. They just want to live in peace, and they have nothing against, you know, the average person has nothing against Israelis, and we have nothing against Iranians. It's just such a pity about the leadership, which it's a big pity, and please God it will be resolved, and we hope that there will be peace between the nations. Anyway, so that was Jakarta. And I thought, well, that's it from Indonesia. I had the most amazing experience. And what happened is 4 years later, again, there was going to be an exhibition in Bandung. Bandung is in West Java, and they asked if Israel can be represented there and if we can attend. So this was another World Stamp exhibition in 2017, and I was so blessed. My wife and I, we felt, wow, this is such a lovely opportunity to go. And my wife had to ask permission from the school, if they would, give her time off to represent Israel with me in Indonesia. And this was going to be in Bandung, which is the third largest city in Indonesia. And all I'd heard about Bandung really is that it's very close to the volcanoes. So we actually went to visit a volcano. Now this is the opening ceremony of the Bandung exhibition. So you can see it was very, very well attended. Many people, many of the local population attended the exhibition. It had tremendous coverage in the press and TV, and it was just such a wonderful atmosphere as well. This was in one of the evenings they arranged for us at the governor's house. And this was the start.
Yeah. Thank you. You all worked so hard and we really so appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Shalom.
It was amazing that they said shalom to me. It was really, and I went with my kippah, and it was, there were no barriers. It was just something very, 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 very unique.
Okay, it's Jerusalem of Gold, and it's just been a wonderful exhibition here in Bandung. Shalom from Israel. Okay. And you know what this is? Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. It's been wonderful.
So in the background, you can see those are the frames where people put up from all the different countries, the different exhibitions. And they judged, they have judges that come as well. And you can get gold, vermel, silver, bronze, all different medals. And they have a Palmares night where they hand out the awards. And people really, it's a big thing to get a gold for your country, or and it's judged by international jury that's represented from, even the jury, you have people from South America, from Europe, from Asia, all judging, and they're very knowledgeable in the different topics that they judge as well.
Thanks so much. Enjoy the exhibition. Okay, and this is just a little souvenir from Israel. Okay.
Thank you for
And
this.
that's from Jerusalem. And that's all from Jerusalem. Okay, enjoy the exhibition, guys. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Not at all. Bye. How do you know?
Shalom.
Yeah.
I watch it in TV such as National Geography
Oh, okay.
or Discovery Channel.
Wow. Okay. So I hope you enjoy it. So, Toda Rabah. Let's thank you.
Thank you.
And shalom is hello and goodbye and peace. We all pray for like peace. And you must one day come and visit Israel. It's very special. Okay, all the very best. And it's so nice meeting you all. And I hope you enjoy it. And enjoy the stamp exhibition. Okay, bye-bye. Shalom.
Shalom.
I forgot to mention, in the in Jakarta in 2012, it also coincided with the European Football Championship. And we had the TV on in most places showing the soccer games for the European qualifiers. And when I was speaking to a lot of the different commissioners and judges, and when we were all socializing, I actually mentioned to them that, do you know, and I asked them, do you know that in the Israeli soccer team, at least a third of the players are Muslim? And it was as if they couldn't believe what I was saying. I said, Wali Badir, who is, he's actually the captain of Hapoel Tel Aviv, and he's one of the top players and scorers for Israel. And, you know, when they heard that, because it's never in the press, it came as such a surprise. They had no idea whatsoever. All they get is the very biased media. And here, for the first time, they're hearing something positive about Israel. It was really, really lovely to see their reactions. You can see this young boy on the internet. He knew Shalom. He came up to me, and they were very happy that our video. No one ever said to me, "Please, I don't want to appear in your video," or "I don't want to speak about Israel" or anything. It was really, really very, very unique.
This is Bobby from Bali, and you were singing. How do you sing it?
La 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 la. Ille matu kumana ye, shabira indaya ha. Ille matu kumana ye, shabira indaya ha.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being ready. Toda Rabah. Thank you very much. Shalom from Israel. Wow.
So that for me was kind of the ultimate. We were having breakfast or having coffee, my wife and I, coffee and some fruit or whatever we were having there. And in the background, I don't know if you saw, there were a lot of people walking. One was from Kuwait, the other one was the Egyptian judge, the other one was from the UAE. They were all walking in the background. And here you had somebody who was from Bali, and he came up to me and he says, Shalom. And I said, wow, how do you know Shalom? And he said, I even know a Hebrew song. I said, do you mind singing for me? And he started singing. It was just unbelievable to hear Hinei Matolu being sung in Bandung. It was, I never ever dreamed that I would ever hear, him singing such a song. It was something, it was so beautiful to hear, and he sings it with such a passion. It was, there are no words, there really are no words. So here is a youngster that actually exhibited, and he worked for the exhibition.
I know. What do you know? A lot. Like what? Can you show me here one? How does it go? Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, and then what else? What other song? Amazing! Wow, wow, wow.
So that really was unbelievable, that in the middle of this exhibition, and you can see the stands in the background where he had the different philatelic bureaus. Then you have also not only exhibition, you have stamp dealers that come in, countries that sell their stamps, and they promote and they showcase what each country has. And here he's singing Havana Gila and Abenu Shalom. It was something absolutely remarkable. So this is an Israeli stamp, and I just want to wish you all, I just want to play something before I end, but this is a beautiful stamp. You can see how the stamp, it really, you have Tashlich, and you have somebody with the, on Yom Kippur and Shavuot and Tashlich, and this is what stamps do. It's so relevant, and it captures the imagination, and it really, it's a real pity that today it's not being used as much as it was in the past, and emails have actually taken over. But when you look at a stamp from a country, it tells you so much about what the country is, and the history of the country, and the culture of the country. And I had the great honor, and it's thanks to Larry that I met the designer of the stamp, Aaron Sheba. He designed these 3 stamps, and he also designed the Jerusalem of gold. Those were the stamps that I gave to the children in Bandung. That stamps have it really when you look at a stamp from a country, it's like being an ambassador for that country, because it tells you so much about what the country is, what it commemorates, and what it stands for. So I'm going to stop the sharing, the screen share, and I want to just play. At the international exhibition, they gave us it's called a anklung. It's a musical instrument made of bamboo, and if you just hold it, it's so lovely. It's got and you hear the sound in many places. It's just such a beautiful sound, just by moving this. It's made of bamboo, and it was given to us as a gift, and it's such a lovely reminder of the sounds of Indonesia. And they also gave me a memento from Indonesia, this is the stamp that you use for cancellations. So they gave this to us at the award ceremonies, and what can I say? It's been such a journey and such a tremendous honor and privilege to represent one's country and in a way one's people as well. Because by wearing a yarmulke and saying you're from Israel, people who were remotely connected to anything about Judaism or Israel would come up to you and they would speak to you openly. And the friendships that my wife and I have made are unbelievable, because I communicate with so many WhatsApps and emails with people all over the world. And I'm extremely grateful to the Israeli Philatelic Federation for giving me the opportunity to represent Israel at these exhibitions. So, Lowell, I want to thank you. And it's been really also a tremendous honor and privilege to appear on the Root and Branch and to be associated with the Root and Branch. And I want to thank our listeners and our viewers. And if there's any questions or any comments, please feel free.